I'm Judith. I'm a Canadian and I'm over 80. And in all those years, I've learned some things about life and about how to create a happy and successful and fulfilling life. And I want to share them here by sharing my stories, by sharing my experience, by giving you unsolicited advice. Take what you like and leave the rest, as usual. Um, so, Let me start by saying please listen to this to the end if you can. I'd really appreciate it because it helps the algorithm. Please please make a comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say about it. Quite early on in the episodes, I think it was episode 6. You may notice on the thumbnails that all the episodes are numbered. I think it was in my episode 6 that I talked about the power of visualization, the magic of visualization, I think it was called, and how if thoughts are things, and what we think about is what grows, what we focus on is what grows, and how we can actually um, create almost miracles in our lives by focusing on imagining and visioning what we want to happen as if it has already happened. And that's known as the power of the power of attraction, the law of attraction, actually. It's known as creative visualization. I recommended a book by Shakti Gawain called Creative Visualization. If you want to learn how to do it, there are lots of YouTube videos about how to do it and so on. Basically, it involves creative daydreaming and having a positive daydream about what you want to happen, not worrying about how it will happen, how it can possibly happen. So the story I want to tell today is another one of the miracles that happened in my life one time, happened in our life, Dan's and my life, my late husband. Um, and that was when we bought our house. So we got married. I told the story in that earlier video about envisioning about our long relationship before we got married. But we got married in 1981, in the fall of 1981. And we started almost immediately. I was 36, he was 39. And we were living in my condo apartment in Toronto, um, which I didn't love. I'm going to talk about that and having a home that you love another time. But so we started looking for a house almost immediately. And there are lots of neighborhoods in Toronto. Dan only wanted to live in one neighborhood. That neighborhood was Leaside, which is Bayview and Eglinton, if you happen to know Toronto. Anyway, it's a nice neighborhood. It was developed in the 1930s, 1940s. Um, it was developed as a series of houses for railroad employees. And it has lovely tree-lined streets and houses that range everywhere from very tiny semi-detached bungalows to detached bungalows to two-story homes, and a lot of homes have been torn down and new homes have been built in the recent years. But back then, not much of that had been done. There was pretty much all the original homes. That was the only neighborhood that Dan wanted to live in, and we were not well off. We both had jobs. And we both had a bit of credit card debt when we got married, or when we started living together, I guess, and we had gotten that paid down. We had paid for our wedding with some help from my parents. And anyway, we're going to buy a house. And I had the condo, so that would be enough. We could sell that, and we would have some equity in that. And then we must have had some savings. I don't remember, actually. We must have had some. So I'll talk numbers here, and remember that this was a really, really long time ago. So house prices were not what they are now. And also times were easier for people to buy homes. You didn't need $1 million, when you only made 50,000 a year or whatever to buy a home. However, we weren't rich. So we started looking for homes. But what we did, first of all, we contacted a realtor that I knew. It was a friend of mine. She didn't know that area, but it was someone that I knew. In fact, it was the woman who had told me about creative visualization and that whole course that I took about it. And she was a real estate agent. And so I thought, okay, we'll use her. And we wanted to give her an idea of what our dream home would be, which we knew we couldn't possibly afford. knew we could not afford it. So I would cut out of the real estate papers, the real estate section of the newspaper, I would cut out homes that we just looked at. We didn't have an internet in those days. You couldn't look at the inside houses, but just pictures of the outside of them. So I would cut out homes that we just thought, oh, wow, that looks amazing. That looks like an amazing place. And they were houses in Leaside, I think mostly, maybe some other neighborhoods, to give her an idea of what we would really like. And I guess she looked at them, and I had this envelope of them. And those houses were priced, I'm going to say, in the 250,000 to 300,000 range, which was hugely expensive at that time. That was likely more than double or about double what we could afford. At that time, in 1981, interest rates on first mortgages were 18%. And second mortgages were 21% or around there, 21%. I had a little mortgage on my condo given by my company at 9.5%. I thought that was a really good rate. That was a really good rate in those days. And so I didn't want to give that up, but then that would mean that any further money we would have to get as a second mortgage. So we figured out that our budget was likely about $125,000 or $135,000. And we went looking in the neighborhood, and we saw a lot of houses, and really some of them were just horrible. As always, when you're looking at real estate, you go into houses and you think, ooh, I wouldn't live here for $1 million. If they gave me this house, I wouldn't want to live in it. But we did see some semi-detached houses. The houses in Leaside, in that neighborhood, a lot of the semi-detached houses and a lot of the detached two-story homes were what Dan and I called the box. So it was a pretty standard layout. It was 2 stories. It was kind of a squarish house, and if it was a detached house and you came in on the ground floor and you had a living room and a kitchen and a dining room, and then upstairs you had a bathroom and 3 bedrooms, not huge. Now, a lot of those houses have since been added on to, they've been extended, if they weren't torn down, they've been modernized. But at that time, most of them were still the box. And that's what we expected we would have to get. And in fact, we thought we'd be lucky if we could get a detached house rather than a semi-detached. We did, and so anyway, we were looking, and not very successfully. And then in February of 1982, my dad died suddenly of a heart attack. Well, that just stopped the house hunt right then, because, I didn't have the heart for it. I just didn't. So we stopped looking for a house, and we got through the death and the funeral and so on. And meanwhile, we decided that real estate agent that we were using wasn't really doing that well. She was pretty new at it, and she wasn't really showing us things that were right for us. So we found another agent who dealt with that neighborhood in about, I don't know, April or May of that year, after a couple of months of mourning and whatever. And then we said, okay, let's go back looking at the house. I think our budget had gone up a little bit at that time because my dad had some life insurance. My mom gave me some of the money from the life insurance, $10,000 or something. But so maybe we could now afford 135,000 instead of 125,000, and that helped. We were looking. We got our hopes up about one house. It was a box, but it was detached, and it was about 2 houses away from a Kentucky Fried Chicken place. So there's always the smell of Kentucky Fried Chicken around. But we got quite excited about it. We put an offer in, but we didn't win. There were competing bids, and we didn't get it. We were very disappointed. Really, really, really disappointed. And but anyway, we went on looking. And then our agent one day took us out to show us some more houses. We went to and then we went to one house, and we went into this house, and oh my goodness, it was amazing. It was an amazing house, and it was a bungalow that had been remodeled to put a second story on it, and no one had lived in it. It was a brand new. It turned out later the person who was doing it was flipping the house, basically. So it's a brand new construction on the top. And so the downstairs had all the charm of the original gumwood trim, which was very popular, those stained glass windows. Well, they weren't really stained glass. Most of them had been replaced. They were single pane windows, but we had a little bit of stained glass. We had the original 2 bedrooms at the back of this bungalow. So it would have been a living room, a little tiny dining room, a hallway, a bathroom, a closet, and then a bathroom, and then 2 bedrooms at the back. And the 2 bedrooms had been that wall had been knocked down, and the whole back of the house was a kitchen with an eat-in area, or you could make it a family room area. So one half was the kitchen area, and the other half was sort of open for seating. And then there was a deck out to the back. The original living room was there, and the dining room was there. It was really small, but there were French doors between them, so you could open that up. It was quirky. It was a quirky house, but it had a lot of character. And upstairs was modern, quite modern. And there was a huge bedroom all across the front of the house. It was 16 feet by 20 feet, and it had a fireplace in it. And there were 2 other bedrooms that were really decent sizes, and a family bathroom. And there was a dressing room for the master bedroom that was built out over the garage with an ensuite bathroom. Wow, we were just blown away. Unfortunately, the price of that house was like, I don't know, I'm guessing now, $190,000, $185,000, something like that. Way, way out of our price range. And we found everything that was wrong with that house as we looked through it, things that weren't finished, things that looked a little dicey, but we loved it. The basement was horrible. The basement was totally unfinished, and it was really a low ceiling, and it was just a bunch of rooms with cement block walls, and it was really terrible. It didn't look like it leaked or anything, but it wasn't a good place. Good for storage. So but we thought, what's the worst that can happen? We went and had some chicken afterwards without the real estate agent, and at a nice little local restaurant, and we sat there and we talked about it, and I said, oh, let's try it. They can only say no. We put in our very, very, very best offer, and I think that was $145,000. We were really stretching. $145,000 compared to $185,000, because we had to get a second mortgage, and the second mortgage was going to be 21%. We only earned so much money. We could only afford to pay so much for our monthly, for the monthly mortgage costs. Anyway, the vendor came back to us through the agent, and with an offer that said, if you could get a second mortgage at 10%, remember the going rate was 21%, and my first mortgage was 9.5%. If you could get a second mortgage at 10%, could you pay more for the house? And we did the math, and we said, yes, we could pay $180,000 for that house, or $181,000. Let's go $180,000 for that house. And he said, done deal. And it turned out that he was the vice president of a trust company. That trust company, like most trust companies, no longer exists. It got absorbed into a bank somewhere along the way. But he was a vice president, or the vice president, I don't know, of that trust company. This had been his wife's project. And what had happened in the real estate market was that house prices had been going up and had been quite high in 1981. And in 1982, there was a bit of a recession going on, and the house prices had come down. And they were, unbeknownst to us, just trying to get rid of the house now. They wanted to get rid of it at the best price they could. And so we agreed to pay $180,000. They sold it to us. Basically, he arranged for us to have, through his company, a 10% mortgage, which meant his company was really taking a loss on that, but it went through and we got the house. And that was an incredible miracle. I mean, there is no way that things should have moved that way for us to get that house. Anyway, we got the house. I think we took possession of it in July, I think July of 1982. And then when we were moving in, I was sorting through all kinds of papers and unpacking and whatever, maybe even a month or two later, and I found the file of our dream houses. And guess what? Yes, you guessed it. That house that we bought, the exact house, was there in that file of clippings of our dream home, listed at way over 200,000. I don't remember if it was 229,000 or 259,000, but it was listed at a price that was so far beyond our means that we could never have bought it. And we got it. The universe just moved in a way. Now, do I believe that it was, when we weren't envisioning that house in particular, but we were certainly looking for a house that we loved. And I really believe that the universe, that in some way, you can do vision boards where you put up vision pictures of the things that you want to have happen in your life. And if you look at those and think about those and meditate upon those, that they can come. And I believe that focus really helped. It was the most incredible piece of synchronicity or coincidence, if you want to call it that. I don't believe in coincidences, of the universe moving to give us what we wanted. Well, I lived in that house for 30 years. I moved out in fact, a little over 30 years. I moved out in 2012. Dan died in 2005. So we were there quite a long time. It was our home. It was a beautiful home. And we loved it every moment that we were in it, from the day we got it till the day I moved out. It had stopped being a really lively place by then. And I'll talk someday about how you know when to move on. But I'll always think of that as our longest, truest home. So there's another example for you, I hope a hopeful one, of how synchronicity, prayer, visualization can help to bring miraculous things in your life, even when you don't know how they're going to actually come apart. So I would encourage you to do creative visualization for everything that you want in your life, whether it's just to get through the next day, a successful meeting, or whether it's the new house you want, the life partner you want. I did that for six years. You can listen to the other video about that. And it works remarkably. So on that happy note, I will leave you for today. I hope you are having a wonderful day, and I hope that these videos are helpful to you. I'd love to see comments. I'd love to see likes. And meanwhile, keep on keeping on, and be a good person, and keep envisioning the creative, so that you can create the happy, successful, and fulfilling life that you deserve. Take care.